Hey guys, welcome back to Coffee and Crystals. I'm your hostess, Katie Chronister. And if you're new to the show, welcome. This is a yoga podcast, but just like yoga in real life, this is more than just the poses or the asana. We talk about self development, wellness subjects. I introduce you into my heart on this podcast. I design Coffee and Crystals to not only share my wisdom of over 500 hours of yoga teacher credentials, traveling the world, learning how to teach yoga in all of the senses, but I created Coffee and Crystals to share my stories. I am a writer. It is one of the first purposes I was very aware of on this earth. And this year I am publishing my first book. So Coffee and Crystals was a place where I could weave in stories, share lessons, invite my friends, my mentors, the people that I invite onto the show are rooted in integrity. That's a purpose here on Coffee and Crystals. And today you are going to meet my neighbor, my friend, the last father figure of the series here in June. It's funny, the series, season 5, Father's Day series, started on the podcast in representation of June, which is Father's Day month. So I brought in my uncle, my mother's husband, Matt, and now you're going to meet Rick, who became a pseudo dad for me. I met him when I was in middle school. I met him and his wife. They lived next door to Granny, and I'm introducing him to you in my book. I'm introducing you to him here on the podcast, but I am extremely grateful that I have been introduced to him at a very pivotal time in my life. Without Ginny and Rick, I mean, we go into this into the episode, but not so much in depth. But without them, I probably would have had a very different story as far as going to college. Meeting them and having them next door to Granny was really a pivotal chapter in my life. They created not just shelter, but love, consistency, balance, and Rick and Ginny, his wife Ginny, that you will meet one day on the show, hopefully in season 6, Leo season, which is funny because we started this series that Rick is on in the Gemini season. He was on the show in the kickoff of Cancer season, which is my birthday month. And then I'm hoping to have his wife Ginny on the show in Leo season, but Rick is actually a Leo. So do you see how beautifully we are all intertwined? Even astrology teaches us that. But today, Rick shares a little bit about discipline, and I think you get an idea of why I mentioned him right off the bat. He reminds me of the epitome of strength, courage, and discipline. He does a great job of talking about what that means to him. And without discipline, I wouldn't be showing up every week for you guys on this podcast. I think sometimes people forget how much work it takes to make your dream come true, and it takes a village. And Rick Vigne is part of my village, and I'm super excited that you get to meet him. He's goofy, he's serious, he's the real deal. There's a lot of things that I learned in this Father's Day series, but I think the biggest takeaway after getting this intimate time with some really special people in my life and asking questions that I didn't necessarily ever ask before and really listening to their answers is I need to date more men like these men. It's funny because Rick makes a joke right off the bat. Like, I guess it wasn't really a joke. It was more like a comment. Like, I can't believe you're still single. And I'm thinking, yeah, because I wasn't looking for the right type of guy. The epitome of like masculine energy, but he has this softness about him. So yeah, I guess this kind of sounds like an ad for myself, but if you're out there, I'm looking for a hardworking gentleman that knows when to be soft, but brings that yang energy, okay? But without further ado, I introduce you to my buddy Rick Vigne. Let's call him up.
I'm telling you, I have no idea why you don't have a boyfriend. Drives me crazy.
Well, I figured we'd either start off with you telling my listeners how great I am, or we could start with what you're the best at, a dad joke.
Oh,
Just remember my nephew sometimes listens, so maybe make it a clean one.
I'm trying to think if I even know a clean one. I don't think I do. Hey, by the way, Look, New World Gym.
Is that the gym that you go to?
Yes. National Rifle Association.
Okay, now I know that cup.
And Dirty Mouthpiece.
Hey, you could probably find a lot of science projects in that cup.
Yeah, I don't think you'd want to do any swabs of that thing.
That's a
There's
very
probably,
sacred cup. You've had that for a while.
well, they last a long time. That's why I got it. And it keeps everything warm or cold.
Well, this is the mug that I picked for you. He just, very zen, very
Namaste.
namaste. I failed you on the crystal. Usually, when people are in the studio, I bring them a crystal as an offering for being on the show. So I'll have to send you one. You're going to get one. But the crystal I picked for you for the episode is a tiger's eye. Have you ever heard of that crystal?
Yeah, I have.
Really?
Yeah.
Signifies courage and strength. I thought it reminded me of you as well. Exactly. Show the listeners your muscle. Courage, strength. It also would be a good crystal to bring with you if you were hunting because it brings calm. It's also a grounding. It's a good mixture of both fire and earth. And we could just end the podcast now because that's basically you, fire and earth.
I'm going to see if I could find this quickly because you will find this very interesting.
What is that?
Um,
Your
it's my brief.
backpack?
Yeah. But I don't know if you can see all this. See this? Is this it? Yeah, it is it. Can you see this? If I empty it,
There's a tiger's eye.
yeah. And these were given to me by Ginny. Look at that. See that?
Yes.
Years ago. And look, there's one with a heart. This is a heart.
Is that from Costa Rica?
No. See, and look, here's it's like a jade, and of course the seashell.
Aw.
And I have carried these with me um, for years. I mean, literally years. And everywhere I go, I keep them with me because I think they bring me luck.
I love that. Well, they
So
do. Crystals
they're
do.
with.
I mean, you can kind of bring whatever you want to manifest to them. That's like a cleansing agent. So has it worked yet? Have you found a non-dirty dad joke in your brain?
Oh God, that's a lot of pressure. Um,
I think well,
okay, how do you catch an elephant?
searching my brain, searching my brain. I don't know. I don't know if I know.
You dig a big pit, big one, and you fill it full of ashes. And when the elephant comes up to the hole, you run up and kick him in the ash hole.
I don't know if I get it.
Forget it. You said a dad joke. That's about as dad as they get.
My friend is in town and I call him dad and he has a lot of asshole jokes too.
Yes. Is he a dad?
He just said from the background, I get it.
Is he there?
He's there, it's early, waking him up for this. We've got a live
But,
audience.
but he heard that joke?
Yeah, and he got it. And he liked it.
Well, I'm sure he'll use it. Tell him to go ahead. Spread it far and wide.
We'll take it on the road.
And ask him to explain it to you later.
Yeah. Great. Great dad conversation.
That was actually pretty stupid. But anyway, go ahead.
Speaking of dads on this show, I guess this is technically going to air in July, which is Christmas in July, my birthday month. I'm celebrating all month long because I'm going to be 40 this year, which you keep telling me is a good age. So I'm
It is a
manifesting
good age.
all the good that's coming my way in this new chapter. But I did a Father's Day series for June. So I've casted you, your people and my people. It's been quite the fight to get you on the show. You're a busy man.
I am.
But I
It's
wanted you on the show to cast you in the group of father figures in my life. So that's you. What are you? You're a pseudo dad. So I'm happy to have everybody meet the Rick Vigne. I feel like you've
well,
taught me a lot of lessons over the year, but one word that definitely comes to mind is discipline. Where does all that discipline come from? You're probably you and Ginny, but definitely you are probably one of the most disciplined people I've ever met in my life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Where do you think that
wow.
comes from?
Well, first of all, thank you for thinking of me in that regard. That's pretty good. Um, Discipline, well, I don't know. I guess it's probably hereditary. I mean, it's my dad was a basically a workaholic and a very good man, and he was that's what he instilled in us is that ethic and that discipline, and that's pretty much what led the way for me. It's this might sound a little weird, but as far as the work thing goes, I've put that probably ahead of everything else in my life. I've always just concentrated on that. Um, I felt in order to succeed, and then when I say succeed, we can talk about that a little bit too, but to financially succeed, I had to kind of keep as a non-educated person. I felt like I had to really keep my nose to the grindstone and outperform those around me. And and I did. So that took discipline. And I think that comes from, I think it comes from my dad. Does that make sense?
It does. Where did you grow up?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh.
Wrong city. I'm wearing Philly.
This is
I knew we were
directly
close.
across the state.
Is that where your dad is from too?
Yeah. Yep. Born and raised in a little borough called Kenmar, little town called Coriopolis. And it's just outside of Pittsburgh, about 25 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh. But it was country, it was rural, very rural.
Yep. So that's something we have in common that we're both from Pennsylvania, born from Pennsylvania.
There you go.
And I got to meet your dad.
Yeah, you did.
What were some of your favorite early memories with your dad?
Favorite memories?
I don't think I've ever asked you that because I've got to hang out with them and experience the two of you
Yeah,
together.
well, I have a lot of good memories, a lot of ones that stick with me. Um, Probably the happiest time. Well, my dad had a very rough job in a steel mill, and he took himself as far as he was able to go being a non-educated person in that arena. And it was very rough. It was a very rough environment. He worked in a blast furnace department. So can he worked a lot of hours, and then on top of that, he was a builder and a remodeler. And when he wasn't in the mill, he was working, uh, doing, remodeling work and things like that, which we were forced to do as child labor. We were his workforce. So there was a lot of times when he was weeks on end, dog tired. It wasn't the nicest to be around.
Mhm.
Yeah, and snapping orders and trying to get things done and do things like that. So there was a lot of that. But we're all he was a hunter and he raised us all as hunters. And when we were hunting, that was a completely different side of him. That's when he was probably his happiest, and us as well. I mean, it was just fun. It was fun to be around him, and it was always a family thing. It was my grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunt, everybody, um, brothers, and that's so yeah, that's probably the happiest times is we were hunting either together, either alone with him specifically, or together as a family.
You've described, I've never gone hunting with you, so that's definitely on the bucket list.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah, I know I am. I got to make that happen. But you've kind of set the scene for me for that before, just kind of the calm, being one with nature.
Yeah, for me, um, with the discipline that you just mentioned, and life, everything that you have to do that you have to do in life, when you can step out of that and not have to think about life, um, and become grounded. For me, it works when I'm in the woods and alone and actually on the ground, actually truly being grounded. And because there's nothing in your mind except what's in front of you. And yeah, you think about things and you say, "Oh, geez, I shouldn't be here. I should be doing this." Those thoughts go through your head, or you have a deadline to meet on something, and that's on your mind here and there. But by and large, it's not, because there's things that are happening out there every second. You know, you'll see a you'll see a fox walking along a fence row hunting for mice. And it's just doing that. It's just surviving. It's just walking, and you're watching that. Or you'll see an owl in a tree that lands in a branch that you can almost reach out and touch it, and you're sitting there just looking at what it looks like. I mean, your mind, you're just there. You're in that. You're just there. So that's the hunt. That's kind of hunting to me. I mean, yeah, you know, bagging an animal and going there and all that, that's all part of it too, but that's not the reason for it, you know. So
So,
yeah, I mean, I think if you were to do that, Katie, even though I doubt you could kill anything,
thanks.
probably don't even squash a cockroach when you see one, but you'll see that, and you'll feel that, and that's an experience. If you haven't done it, you should do it, and you're welcome. I'd love to show you that.
I was gonna read to you the chapter that I've started writing about you in my book that I'm working on to publish, but I actually thought it would be more fun to kind of just story tell, and then it will help me write it, and then I'll read it to you when I'm down in Florida in person. Because I
Yeah,
can't,
don't read it to me now, because I'll probably cry. So
yeah,
just don't.
keep that manly shield around you for this episode.
Yeah, I I got to keep up this image.
But I can't decide if it's when you were chasing me down wearing all the weird like jumpsuit Ghostbuster painting outfit and your goggles, because Ginny had you on a mission to track me down. But what I'm writing in the book is how you didn't know that I had like a stalker in the neighborhood at the time. So it made like I wasn't interested in meeting anybody new. I was just trying to walk the dog and like get out. But meanwhile, Ginny's like, when you see her, grab her. And I'm like trying to stay away from the Ghostbuster looking man. Or
Yeah.
when you were like, if you need me, call me. And I screamed violent murder. So you thought somebody was at the guest house trying to kill me. And it was, well, our little friend Ratatouille. I was like,
Yeah, there's
either
that
way
too.
you get introduced, those are two pretty good stories.
Well, yeah, I mean, the one, uh, you know, we saw you in a neighborhood, so we knew you existed, and we sort of knew about your situation there, and 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 Jenny said, "Oh, you know, we got to get him to babysit. We got to get him. We got to get him to babysit. So whenever you see him, just ask him. Just ask him. Just so lo and behold, a chipping, sanding, chipping toxic paint off the side of my house. I had a full face respirator on, and sure enough, here you come trucking down the road. And I thought, shoot, okay, I jump off the ladder, run over there, talk to you with this full face respirator on, and I didn't think how you would look at me like that. All I knew was, we got to get you to babysit. That's all I knew because I had my marching orders.
You got kids in there.
So, so yeah, I definitely remember that, and I definitely remember how you looked at me at that juncture. So, which is amazing that you even here we are. It's like
It's funny because Granny did her own spying. Like, she would sit out on different perches, either in the front of the house or by her little dining set outside of the side of the house and watch all the neighbors. And she would just know everything about you guys just from watching you all day long. But she would just always be like, he's out there working. He's out there working. He's redoing the front. Like she knew all about your renovations just by watching you.
good Lord. Well, if anybody would know, it would be her, I guess. I can
So
still
what were
remember.
your funny memories that you were saying that you remember when you first met me, or some of your earliest memories of me?
Well, there was that. There was that one, and I don't know. Katie, there was a lot. There was a lot of things along the way that come to mind, but that was later. But like
Yeah.
early on, it was sort of. It was sort of. You were still a kid. I mean, I knew you were about Nikki's, my daughter's age, and you know, turns out you guys ended up becoming buddies too over the years, but over that time. But I don't know. I just really just trying to be a neighbor, and trying to get to know everybody there at that time. So, but I definitely remember that, and yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything like you were talking about the rat.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that,
I was like, I don't
I
know if
mean,
anyone has ever experienced, I mean, friends of mine that live in New York have obviously had rats in their house, but that one running across my bed, I'm just like, but Ginny and I laugh with because, she's got her spirit animal book, but the
oh
animal
yeah,
that keeps coming back to me, no matter where I live, is the rat. And
really.
it all started when I was living in your guys' guest home and it ran across my bed that night and I basically died and came back alive after that happened.
Yeah, I can remember getting woke up and saying, you got to go get Katie." What? I'm thinking, what happened? Somebody broke in. What? What?
You're like
Oh
ready to
no.
go with that rifle.
Well, it was whatever. I mean, I wasn't gonna let anything happen to you. Oh, it's the mouse. Okay, it's okay,
But
which
yeah,
was more the.
there's just always all these like rats coming to me in my life. So
Well,
Jenny's
what does it?
actually really cute. Like I actually would like you to hold one day. I'm like, I'm really not there yet, Jenny, but I'm just gonna have to trust you on this.
I, you know, yeah, Ginny, go ahead on up and pet that grizzly bear. See what he says. See what he does. You know, I mean, God bless her.
God bless.
So,
So yeah, that's probably going to be the chapter name because we'll kind of transition with the spirit animal chatter. But I wanted to pivot a little bit. I am the worst when I am doing your elevator pitch when I try to talk about you and Krav Maga, and I was like, okay, I need a professional to explain to my listeners what exactly, first off, what is Krav Maga? Because you started practicing that after I lived with you guys.
yeah, I actually started pretty late in life. But Krav Maga itself, the term means close combat fighting. Okay. It's not a competition. It's not a, it's not just a workout. It's a survival mechanism. It's um, it's very reactionary, which is what the training is about, is to get your muscle memory into that vein so that when something happens to you in a negative way, you just react to it and you do a lot of damage real quick. Okay. And that's what it's all about. So for me, uh, what what pretty much all my life, I wanted to do some form of martial arts, and I was never in a situation or in a location where I could because I traveled a lot, and I was never in one place long enough to get far enough down the road to where if I had to change, I would have to start over again. So I never really did until I moved here, until I got on this side of the fence with the business and everything. And to be honest with you, the person that turned it on to me is the person that moved into your house, Joe.
Really?
Yeah, and how that happened was he said, "Hey, there's a place on Fowler Street that teaches Krav Maga, and I'm thinking about going." And it wasn't on Fowler Street; it was over here, close to where I work. And I went like that week and signed up, and that was almost 8 years ago now. So, so that's how that came about. But so yeah, to me, it was uh, I've always been able to handle myself pretty well. But in today's world, especially in some of the locations that I go into or was going into, and especially if I was with my family, I wanted to have a little more of an edge up on that if I needed it. And I have that. I now have that. So that's the reason for me. And it's a good. I think everybody should do it, and I actually think every woman should do it because even if you just get through the basic, just the very basic training, which would be like the first year, there's enough um, taught to you repetitiously in that timeline that if somebody come up and grabbed your hair or somebody come up and put you in a bear hug and try to get you into a van, your body would say, been there, done that, and it would go into its action, and you might do enough damage, you probably would do enough damage to deter that situation enough to get away. So I think I think it's important for everybody to be able to do that. And it's again, it's discipline, okay? Because if you start it and you're just going there and you're just okay, I'm gonna go through these functions and these moves and these processes. Oh, God, can it just be over? Can I go? And or if you go into it and say, okay, I didn't quite get that right today, but I know we're going to cover it again 15 more times in the next 15 weeks. That's training. That's you're training your body, you're training your muscles in your mind to be able to um, go there when you need to.
I think
So
that
that's Krav Maga.
okay, yeah. So again, better than me. I was like, yeah, it's something like if you look at him wrong, poke your eyes out.
Well,
That's the
that's
pitch that I was giving.
that's quite possible. So best thing to do is not look at me that way, okay? Because you might not be able to see again. So
But I feel like the discipline for me would be literally just going. It's funny because I say that even about people with yoga. Like everyone says, oh, I don't do yoga. I don't like to stretch, or I'm not flexible, or I can't sit still, or I need to do my
exactly.
workout. And I'm always thinking, well, that's the biggest part of yoga is literally just showing up. And I feel like that would be probably the same for this.
No, it's 100% the same. And listen, along those lines, okay, yoga. When I was back in the day when I was doing P90X, remember that? Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yoga was a one of the days, which was a longer. It was like an hour and a half of of that. And when I first said, okay, I guess I'll do the friggin' yoga, whatever. And at the end of that, I was a ball of sweat and pissed off because I couldn't get into those positions, and it ended up being one of the hardest things to do. And it was, and this is where the training comes in. It was the one that I despised, doing the most, but I forced myself to do it because, it's just like working out. If it's leg day, which everybody hates, and then you're doing arms, okay, then it's leg day again, and then you're going to do arms again. Okay. I mean, you should concentrate on the things that you don't like to do the most because that's where you're the weakest. So, and I think that's a classic example with yoga. I think everybody thinks it's a simple thing and it's a girl thing and it's this and that. It's not. It's a it's a process, and it's a learning process like anything else. So the more you train, the better you get.
Yeah, and I always remind people too that the stronger you get, that's also like yoga is way more than just flexibility, it's strength too.
Correct. That's right. Both physically and mentally.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if somebody wanted to start though, what would be some tips about so showing up? But I know that you're there for like 2 hours. Is it always that long, or do you just stick around and go to numerous classes?
Well, for me, it evolved into I actually instruct now. Okay, I'm one of the coaches there. Um,
Of that. Well, maybe
so it's evolved into that for me, and it's I'm amazed at how much of a revolving door it is with people that come and don't stay. Okay, and especially they don't stay if after the first month or so when it starts to get harder, that they're just done. Okay, that's it, and I think in their mind they might go away thinking, okay, I can kick somebody's ass now. I don't know if they do or if they don't. Some of them just simply can't afford it. But the bottom line is again, it is the discipline of it. If you want to, if you start golfing, you're going to suck at it. Okay, bad. But if you keep going, you're gonna get better. And that's with anything. I mean, that's just with anything in life. And this is some of these moves that we do. Weapon takeaways and and chokes. Choke releases and different things. Um, takes a lot of practice. And if you're not training for it, you're not going to be proficient at it. So, and even a lot of the people that are there now, and especially even my age and younger, but mostly closer to my age, as long as they've been at there, they still suck at it. Okay, they still, and it's like as an instructor now or as a coach, it's like no, no, no. You just listen and just do. But everybody learns different, and everybody does it different. And in a situation is you're not going to look like Jackie Chan, or Bruce Lee. What's going to come out is going to come out. Your survival, man. It's probably not going to be that pretty, but it's going to be effective. And so, it's at least they got the concept, you know. So I would say for those that start, don't stop.
don't stop. Okay. So something that's resonated with me when we've been chatting recently is, and I hear you say it even when you're not saying it, because I was saying something about money, and you're like, Katie, money, 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 money. Like if you focus too much about around money, then you're not going to have money. So I was just thinking as I'm writing out my story and characters that I introduce like you, like what have the lessons been that you've taught me? And I think physical health is definitely you and Ginny really just kicked that off. Like if I wasn't living with you guys before I went off to college, I mean, that is my story, right? You were part of my path, but that really kicked off just the nuggets of eating clean and Ginny waking me up at 5 a.m. and making me go to the gym and a crazy boot camp before I went to high school that day. Like instilling those practices and that discipline with my food and the way I was running with you when you got off work. those are all things that were really important. Rolling out my yoga mat for the first time in college. Not Ginny didn't necessarily introduce yoga to me, but she was almost still kind of like an
Yeah.
example of that for me that kept me going to yoga. So, what are some things? Obviously, we've talked about discipline, but what are some ways that you've created this mindset to keep such a healthy physical body? The way you guys eat and give yourself nutrition, I think that's really hard for people. But something you said to me is like that to stop focusing so much about money and also like switching your mindset so that you can create a more abundant life.
I'm going to say a couple of things, and that's probably going to be contradictory.
I
Okay.
like a little controversy on the show every now and then.
Okay. Money, money, money is not a problem until you don't have any. Okay. Then it's a big problem. Okay. And I've been on both sides of that fence. So I think you have to stay, and I think you're experiencing this now, Katie. I think you have to stay money driven in your pursuit. Okay. And have that work for you, how it's going to work for you. Okay. For me, it was work harder than the next guy, work longer than the next guy, suffer more than the next, everything with that. And my financial successes came later in life for me, which is probably a good thing because if I would have been financially successful at a younger age, I would probably not be as financially successful today as I am. Okay, because who God only knows what I
I
would
can
have
resonate
spent it
with
on.
that.
Okay, so there's that. Um, so I think it's important. It's it does become a real balance thing. Okay, and it's hard. It's a hard balance, and I think it's just like, I've always had my own gym in my house. I still do. And when I go to my gym in my house and I look around, I'm the only one in the gym in my house. Okay. Like Nikki came for a while. David came for a shorter while, and then they've just tailed off. Okay. So again, the days that you're sore and the days that you don't want to work out and the days you have to do a body part that you don't want to do is the day that you really need to knuckle down and do that because that's where you need the attention. So, so, you have to have it in the heart to want to do it. You have to have that drive and that discipline to do it. Just like any professional athlete can tell you that, you know. And I think now, with all due respect, knock on wood a little bit, um, when I look around at other people my age, um, I I think they're way older than me in a lot of ways, and they are. So I think in my mind, I'm still hung up at 18. Okay. My body, I try to keep it as if I was in my 30s. And I'm not saying there isn't times when you go off the rail. Like now, later in life, I have some injuries. My elbows are bothering me and some arthritic things, but you got to push through that. You just got to keep pushing through that. So I'm not sure if I answered the question the way you asked it or not, but
I think the
you
idea of just
have
pushing through is important.
yeah, and push it, and also, you have your career path, which, like I said at the onset, to me, that's always was the number one. That came ahead of everything. It was important for me to be able to do what I did, to be able to provide to those that depended on me. Okay, period, including you. Okay, so that's to some degree, not totally, but so yeah, that becomes a there's days when like come in here and I just think, screw it, I'm out, I'm done, I'm gonna go hunting, you know. And I don't, I never do. I just, whatever it is, whatever's presented to me that day, I put it on the table and dissect it and go. So, but it's a tricky balance. It's a tricky balance.
So how do you see success now then?
Are you talking financial success or are you talking,
What comes to mind first?
well, typically when somebody says success, they mean financial success.
Yes.
Okay, that's what's in the mind. But how many times, Katie, have you heard those around you say, well, all I want to do is be happy? Okay, well, what makes you happy? Oh, I don't know, being a mass murderer, maybe. I mean, does that make you happy? I mean, uh, you know, uh, if, and this is where the contradiction may come in. I think if making a bunch of money makes you happy, then you should concentrate on making a bunch of money. Okay. But I don't think that money can buy you happiness. Okay. Because I think, money does a lot of things and it makes life easier in a lot of ways, but it doesn't give you what you are and what you're here to do and what your purpose is. So I think um, finding that purpose uh, is tricky, and you get into a little bit of a different dimension on the spiritual scale when you start talking about this stuff because it's a lot of it's right in front of your face and you don't see it, and a lot of it has to do with being conditioned socially the way we have been and so forth and so on. So you kind of have to go through those barriers. And I think what takes you through those barriers is experience and that and it's then you're aged. Okay, then you're a little later in life, but you do get there. Okay, so I could say that's success. Okay, which that would have been getting through that barrier and being financially successful along the way. So it's all kind of comes together in a successful package. And at the end of the day, um, I think you're internally happy that you're there. I think you're at least one more step closer to God, so to per se.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
It did. I mean, I'm definitely following you. I think that I ask that to guests a lot. I mean, we got there on our own with you, but I always ask people, what their purpose is, or if they resonate with that word, or if they feel like they have a purpose. And what I've noticed, most of the guests on Coffee and Crystals are excited to answer that and have an answer. But I also am okay with the guests that I've noticed that kind of stresses them out. But it does seem to be mostly at a younger age, the guests that I have on. They're like, oh, I
Yeah.
know. And I'm like, honestly, at a period, there were so many periods in my life that if I was asked that, I would just immediately probably go to Julie, my sister, and just think church and just not even
Yeah.
understand. I wouldn't even be conscious of what that question was really being asked.
That I get that. And I got to tell you, Ginny she's helped me a lot with that because okay, when when the proverbial shit hits the fan on a day, when I'm ready to give somebody a free Krav Maga lesson that needs it, okay, um, which is an emotion that you need to get out of you. Okay, I get that part, but um, there's there is a reason that circumstance happened that is for us to learn from, not for the other person to have to learn from. They're on their path, you're on yours. So I think you have to be conscious, and I'm not too good at this sometimes, of, okay, what's the lesson in this circumstance for me? How am I gonna how am I gonna deal with this? And I've heard this, you've heard this a long time ago, and I think about all the time is, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
And that's just a good thing to pop in your mind, because when you think about what that man in human form, person, human being went through, just to show that it doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter what we all are and what we're all part of. What problem could you have that would equal that?
Yeah.
It's just you're dealing with just a speck of crap that's on your glasses that is meaningless, because in 3 days' time or a week's time, you're gonna forget about what you were even pissed off about.
Yeah, it's the epitome of coming back down to earth and realizing that it
Exactly.
is just that. It's just the earth form of whatever is happening.
Exactly.
So I've told my listeners a couple times that, and you mentioned on the show that you kind of reference not being book smart, or I don't think you said book smart. You've said something else like no smarts, hard work. But I can relate to that because I think my first hustle was when I moved in with you guys. I was like, okay, I really got to fix my grades if I will have any chance of getting out of Fort Myers and going to college, because my grades had really dropped in my freshman and sophomore years of just everything that was going on at Granny's house. I'm not blaming that, but that was like a big part of it. Malnutrition, the trauma that was
Sure.
going on, and moving in with you guys really kind of physically set me up, and mentally, emotionally helped me kind of get more structure so I could get into a nice school. But I think one of my tactics was leaning on being a writer. And I don't know if you remember this, but I was first denied to many schools that I applied to, but I really had my eye on Florida State. I think it was more just because most of my friends at that time were going there. So that's where I just was like, I have to get into Florida State. And at that time, it was really pinned as the easy school to get into, at least my friend group. It was easy for them to get into every school. But I had this secret because I was getting declined. My SAT scores weren't high enough, and I was starting to kind of freak out. So I had my boss at the restaurant write me a letter. I had my English teacher, because I always loved writing and I always got great grades in English and writing and those types of classes. And then I had you write a letter about me. And I didn't hear anything from the admissions office. So then I decided to print out the letters, write another handwritten letter, and just mail it directly to the admissions office for what these three people were saying about me to give me a chance to go to Florida State. And they handwrit me back with also like the acceptance letter underneath, kind of like mocked my own thing. And I think that writing my story and having that human aspect behind my application is what got me into Florida State. So do you remember writing that letter, that recommendation letter?
I do. Yeah, I really do. And I gotta tell you, Katie, and I've said this to Ginny, yeah, I mean, you're the same age as my kids. Okay, so you guys are all going through the same thing at the same time. And I watched the difference in you all is dramatic. Okay, it's just really, it's dramatic. So, as a parent and a younger parent, you're trying to navigate that and be the beacon out there for all this and all that. But I will say this about you. Okay, I I don't think I saw another person at that time, your age, that was as driven to do what you were going to do. Clear, getting student loans. You let whatever, you didn't let anything stand in your way to get where you wanted to get to at that point in time. And I think most kids your age at that time were, you know, a lot of them were probably fairly connected with parents that had, some financial success and or relationships with these various colleges and things and all that. So it wasn't a very fair playing field. You were on your own. You weren't even the home you had was our home, which wasn't really your home, so to speak. So I just I just always thought it took guts to do what you did. A lot of it, I still do, and I still think you're following that. I still think that that's how you operate,
Yeah.
and I think that's how you need to operate. You're following your dreams, man, and you can't let anything stand in the way, even when you get kicked in the teeth.
Yeah.
So, and you know where we are, so
Right.
you have a cushion if you need it.
Come out, watch The Simple Life, watching gators.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the one thing that I also am like, just more strength and courage that you and both Ginny have. Because when I think about spending time with you guys, the fear that I have to get over is walking from where I would sleep in like the new guest area and like walking to the house. If I wasn't staying in the house, I would be scared of the alligators getting me in the morning.
Oh God.
It's not a fear I have to worry about. Squash this fear for me.
Nah, I'm not going to say that they might not be there, but you just walk around them. Okay. I mean, that doesn't,
You make
I
it
mean,
so easy.
here- here's the way I look at that, Katie. It's just it's like, okay, they're not in our world. We are in theirs. Okay. They were here a long time before we were. So, if you want to live in Montana, you got to put up with a grizzly bear or two. If you want to live in Florida, you put up with a gator or two, if you want to live in the country. And I got to deal with them. Uh, they don't bother me and I won't bother them. If they get aggressive with me, they won't get aggressive anymore.
Okay, so you could take on an alligator with this training.
Not with that training, but I would definitely take them out. I mean, which there can't be. I mean, if you have that's with any wild animal. If they've gone rogue and they're not letting you out your door, well, I'm coming out the door. Okay,
Love that about you.
guns a blazing. So
Well, to end the show, what would you say you have found that your purpose is here on Earth?
I that's a very I think for me, um, it's to um, become more aware. Another step closer to the source, you know, and and to try to understand what has happened to us as a human species and where we are supposed to be and how we're supposed to be living life on this earth as God intended it to be. So I think I'm a few steps closer to that. Um, you know, and I hope um like right now. I hope that something that I've said or something that I've done in my life has been um, helpful and encouraging to people behind me. I'm not saying to do what I did. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying you should do what I did. I just think that every if you take a mirror, Katie, and you break it on the ground, there's a million pieces to it. Okay, so consider this mirror to be God, if you will. Smash it. there's a zillion pieces, and then sit there and put all those pieces back together all the way through the years to make it exactly the whole that it was. I think that's exactly what we are. I think we're all zillions of pieces of the source, and we're all trying to get back. We all have to get back to that source one way or the another, either, and it's probably going to take many lifetimes to do that. But I think with each evolution is another baby step towards that. So I did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Because I tend
I
to.
love conversations like this. And then I was thinking, because every chapter and every like chapter that I write, obviously there's a character, there's a storyline, but I always make sure there's a lesson. And I was like, maybe the lesson will be from this mere metaphor you just shared.
Well, I'm not saying that's just how I think about it, because I think, uh, reasonable people are inherently good, okay? And everybody wants to do good and wants to do the right thing. And I think, uh, you know, when you look at the things that are going on in our society today, it's just insanity. It's just two people can't agree that something is blue. It's just the way it is.
Trickles down to so many other places everywhere.
Oh my God. I mean, we could talk about that for the next 5 years and still not get anywhere.
Mhm.
But I think, you know, um, I think when each individual sits alone and thinks about this, that they come to some form of a conclusion about that along those lines. And it's, there's something there's there's something out there that's much bigger than us, much bigger than what we know. And we're getting there. We just keep walking along, getting there. And so maybe, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I thought that way when I was in my 20s and 30s, maybe even my 40s. I don't know. Um, I always knew something was something doesn't meet the eye here, you
Yeah.
know. That was always in my psyche. And I think and maybe that's wisdom. Maybe as you get older, you do get wiser and yeah, and all that. But it's I do think that we are where we need to be at the moment. And I think if you try to push that, it doesn't work like that. You have to you have to live it. You have to experience
Go
it.
back around and collect $200.
That's right. Try to stay out of jail. Yeah.
Exactly. Um,
Oh, I see.
Rick,
I
I
see your
appreciate
face. I wish.
you coming on the show. I know
Well,
it would have been better in person, but we can't wait until October. That's when I'm coming.
well. Listen, I see your face. I want to reach out there and give you a hug. But I'll give you that hug. I'll see you in October.
Yeah.
And listen, thanks for having me on, man. I hope I didn't bore you too bad. Uh,
Good thing this coffee is strong.
yeah.
That's a
Listen,
wrap.
listen, you better go dig that ash hole.
Okay. And then we stop right there, stop the recording.